Housing First has emerged in Canada and elsewhere in the world as a key response to homelessness. It's based on the idea that if you have people who are homeless, the best solution is to put them into housing and give them the supports that they need so that they can stay housed. The At-Home Chez Soi project has been really instrumental in providing an evidence base for this approach and has demonstrated that you can take the most hardcore, long-term homeless person with complex issues, and if you give them housing and the right supports, they generally stay housed. A key question that emerges from Housing First, however, is how does it work for young people? Young people who are homeless are quite different than adults. The causes of homelessness are different. The experience of homelessness is different. And for many of them, they're in the throes of adolescent development, whether it's cognitive, social, physical. So we need to think about how does some approach that's been developed for chronically homeless adults work for young people. We know that some projects like the Infinity Project run by the Boys and Girls Clubs of Calgary has shown incredible success, where 95% of the young people who enter that program wind up staying housed. But there's other evidence from people like Cheryl Forchuk that suggests that maybe it's a little more complicated and that some young people actually prefer to sort out some of their issues and get training and support before they actually have to take on that full responsibility of running their own house. Do those views really contradict is an important question. In some ways, they get to the root of what Housing First is about. And Housing First, at its core, is about client choice, that people should have a say in the kind of housing they need and the supports that they need. So one of the things we've done is taken that Housing First model and see if we can adapt it to the needs of young people, knowing that the causes of homelessness for youth are significantly different than those that affect adults, that the experience of homelessness is different, and that at the end of the day, we're dealing with young people, many of whom are in the throes of adolescent development, whether it's cognitive, physical, psychological, or social. So what would a Housing First framework for youth look like? Well, let's start with the core principles. There are 5 core principles of Housing First for youth. The first is that young people should be provided with immediate access to permanent housing with no housing readiness requirements. In other words, they don't have to have dealt with addictions issues or mental health issues or otherwise get their affairs in order. They should be provided with housing first. The second principle is that the approach should be based on positive youth development orientation. So we need to understand the risks that young people face, but we also need to understand the assets that they bring, because young people can move forward in their lives with the right supports. The third point is about youth choice and self-determination. So again, young people should have a choice about what kind of housing they move into, what kind of supports they have, and the progress that they make. The fourth principle is that young people need individualized and client-driven supports. Rather than force young people to fit the program, we need a program model that works to fit the needs of individual young people. The final core principle, and this is an important one, is there needs to be a focus on social and community integration. In order to help young people move forward with their lives, they need support in learning how to develop adult relationships, in working with landlords and employers, in getting involved in the community, in going back to school, many of these things. From there, we need to consider the application of Housing First. That is, how do we put it into practice? A useful place to start is consider that we need to think about Housing First as a philosophy that should be embraced by everyone who's working with young people in the sector. So that whether you're working in a school or in an emergency shelter or a housing program, the goal should be to get young people into the right kind of housing as soon as possible. The second thing is that we need specific and targeted programs to actually do that work. Because there's a lot of case management required and supports required, we need to have dedicated teams and of people who are going to be able to support the young people as they move forward in their lives. All of this application work has to be based on the assumption that we're not just trying to help young people become independent, but we really want to support them to move into adulthood.